Hi, it's Monday, it's 3 o'clock, and welcome to Together Unlocked. I'm Jew Gosling, artist and artistic director of Together 2012, which is bringing you this live stream today. With me in my East London studio is.
Julie Newman.
And Julie is an artist and our chair. And before we give you some audio description, let's go over to the other half of the virtual sofa in the West Midlands for some introductions and some audio description.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I am Robin Surgeoner, also known as Angry Fish. I'm business director at Together 2012 up here in Sutton Coldfield at the slightly leaning end of the sofa. Um, Today I'll do my audio description. Um, I actually found something that isn't black in my wardrobe, so I am sporting a salmon and grey and white check shirt, which, as an audio description, might not do it justice. Um, but that and it's a proper button-up shirt and everything posh like that. And I also have grey and white hair and silver rimmed glasses.
I am Josh Surgeoner. I'm a research student and host of Together Unlocked TV. I've got quite dirty blonde hair at the moment. And I'm currently wearing a blue and red British swimming hoodie.
Because, of course, you are both para athletes, stroke coaches, and we will come back to that. So I have short, well, none of us really have that short hair anymore, but I have short, tenured red hair. I'm tamed with plenty of brill cream. In my late 50s. I have black framed glasses and a pink t shirt which says Superwoman on it, and it has a picture of a woman in a developing country carrying a burden above her head on which is writhing a Superman. I also have my wrists in splints, and I have a pewter bangle on one side and a purple watch on the other. Julie, let's have a bit of description from you.
Hi, I have silver and gold freshly washed hair and rather unkempt. I have dark rimmed glasses and I have got a black t shirt on. Wow.
Yes, for anyone who can't see Julie, she's sort of melting into the background, which in East London is a Together banner in graffiti style, which, although you can't see the top of it, also has lots of images of the different things we do at Together 2012. So there's film, photography, acting, dance, music. I can't quite see behind drama, painting, and of course a cup of tea, because in more usual times we do everything over a cup of tea, so we encourage you to have one, put your feet up, and join us for the next hour for chat, art, and lots more. Also behind us is our teddy bear. This week's teddy bear is Fergus, and on Wednesday, we will have new teddy bears competing for the title of that week's Paralympics. We race clockwork toys so that the most competitive family in the world in the West Midlands has the opportunity to fit one of their many medals onto their teddy bear if their teddy bear wins and ours gets the same old gold plastic one. We have had some intimations of cheating, so we'll be watching that VAR very, very carefully on Wednesday. And there's also below the graffiti banner what is actually a very dark blue velvet curtain. And Julie's t shirt is trying to disappear into it, so we have the headless woman. And in the West Midlands, struggling but making a massive progress, we now have a green backdrop. We don't have an image to replace the green screen yet, but we're getting there. We expect to be here for quite some time to come because we're all shielding. So, a particular shout out if you're watching at home and shielding too. And finally, with the audio description, each of us has random cats, and in our case, assistance dogs in the house. Our assistance dogs are pretty well behaved, so they're relatively quiet and downstairs. But you may see tabby cats, long haired black cat, black and white cat, we're going to try and ignore them. But we now have a special page on our website just for the pets. So if you click on our website, www.together2012.org.uk, and go to Together TV, as well as the highlights page underneath that, there is now an animal hosts. Tell us a little bit about your animals, just in case we see them, Robin and Josh.
We've got two cats, one of which is called Baby. Neither of them were named by either of us. We should stress that. One of which is called Baby, which is much more like a cat than a dog. No, more like a dog than a cat, even. A cat being like a cat isn't really a surprise, is it? In that, yeah, she follows Emily around everywhere. And then the other cat is called Princess, who's quite a clumsy cat most of the time, other than when she's hunting butterflies, in which case she regains all of her stealthy ability, and then loses it all immediately. It's quite entertaining to watch.
I mean, you're not likely to see the cats because the doors are shut. If you see the fish, things have gone really horribly wrong.
I was reading in the paper that somebody has become a TikTok star because she took back some tadpoles that she found drying up in a puddle, and then she found some more, and then she found some more, and then she started making TikTok videos about them, which have gone viral. It's now turned into a sort of baby frog situation, which seems a bit more challenging. But yes, I mean, I have a tank full of guppies, and they're really the fish world's rabbits. And in the usual times, I free cycle them. So there's little colonies of G90 guppies all over London, but of course, not possible for the duration. So I have a very happy tank. But yes, if they start marching upstairs demanding in, I shall worry as well. But enough of this nonsense. This month, June 2020, is Newham Heritage Month, and the theme of Newham Heritage Month is making a home in Newham. So we thought we would start by chatting a little bit about that and start off by telling you about Together 2012 and why we have a home in Newham. We were founded as a one off volunteer led festival. So if you're volunteering for the first time at the moment, beware. These things are never as simple and straightforward as you think they're going to be. But under the auspices of the UK Disabled People's Council, who then had an office in Stratford, we organised a festival which brought together local residents to celebrate the Paralympics, particularly disabled residents, but as with everything we do, it's disabled led, but it's for everybody. And we're also committed to making whatever we do free. Again, for those of you who are visually impaired, the tabby has gone, the black and white cat has come along to listen to the story of Together 2012. As it happened, like so many things during 2012, it didn't go quite according to plan. The venue that we were going to be using for the festival closed halfway through the Olympics. We reorganized everything and we decided we would put some things off, postpone them to Disability History Month, which is November, December. And that was so popular, and so was the Summer Festival, that we were invited to carry on, or asked to carry on by the people who'd participated. And so in March 2013, we made a permanent home in Newham for Together 2012 by setting ourselves up as a community interest company. We're led by disabled artists who are based in the local area, along with Robin in that well-known part of East London, Sutton Coldfield. We have a community advisory board of people from different communities and age groups and impairment groups to make sure that everything that we do is as inclusive as we can possibly make it. And we also have non executive directors from the worlds of business and the arts. So now, as well as continuing to run an artistic program and a big festival in Disability History Month, we also have a year round outreach program of free clubs, as we call them, which are creative workshops which we run on weekday mornings for disabled people and whoever they'd like to bring with them. And we call that our clubs program. And since last year, it's been funded by the lottery. And we're just so grateful, aren't we, to the
Oh,
lottery
yes.
for also and then allowing us to move the program online to our Join In From Home program and launch this live stream as part of it. We're going to have a look at a video in a little bit about the Join In From Home program. But first, Julie, you moved to Newham in 2007 and made a home here. How did you find it?
Um, it was interesting to move. I've always been a South Londoner, so it's very different from South London. There's a very strong sense of community up here, which is very strictly defined as East End. Um, and happily, that's very diverse. So where I live, just off of Green Street, it's you couldn't get more diverse. I think it completely reflects the demographic in the census. It's lovely. It's a lovely mixed area. We've got the market at the end of the road. We've got the Green Street shops. There's a lot of open vegetable shops and lots of shiny things in windows. So there's lots of jewelers and sari shops with lots of sparkling things. At twilight, it's beautiful to drive down. There's also a park just around the corner from me, which I think is very heavily used, certainly by the young people and the children. But also the community have a very great interest in it and making sure that the plants are well looked after, etc. There's a gang of feral cats who live there as well. And the cat protection people in Newham are well aware of that. So every so often they do a raid and sterilize them, just to try and keep the population down a bit. When the park was opened for 2012 Olympics and Paralympics, during that period of building and creation, there was a massive amount of cats that needed to be rehomed. There were loads of feral cats who lived there in the various garages and old shop fronts, etc. And I think Celia Hammond did a really wonderful job. But I think one of the problems that all of the pet rescue people are having over this period of time during the lockdown is the lack of support. I know that Chester Zoo is really struggling because they've lost a source of income, as indeed have all the other zoos. So I think if we need to be aware of the wonderful jobs that these pet rescue uh, or animal rescue centres do. And if we have a spare bob or two, buy something from them online or send them a donation.
Yes, I wasn't quite thinking about the pets making a home in Newham for Newham Heritage Month, but it's a fairly good point, particularly as we now have Tabby in between us, glaring away, saying, yes, of course you should make a home in Newham. We do say on the Animal Hosts page, all 5 cats that are currently living in the G90 studios have been rescued from Animal Ark vets. And I believe those certainly a lot of animal rescue places are still operating. But to try and ignore the animals who are now trying to climb up the banner and continue with our theme, the Newham Heritage Month website has a huge range of information, videos, activities, virtual walks. It should have been last month, and with just a month's delay, they've managed to take that whole program online. Together 2012 is doing a particular activity with young people, so we'll tell you a little bit more about that on Wednesday. I was thinking I made my home in Newham back in 1985, so what's that going to be? 35 years this year. But in fact, I was very surprised. We just moved, sadly, in January, Together 2012 offices to the St Bart's Centre in East Ham, which is lovely. And one day we will certainly hope to be back there. It's part of the Church of England, so the building has been closed since lockdown, and there's no immediate plans to open it for anything except possibly private worship. But I then discovered that 2 of my third cousins had actually got married in the sister church, and I knew I had family from around here in the past, but I hadn't realised that I'd still had family there. So that's been a nice thing to find as well. I did some research for Folk in Motion, our wheelchair dance company, for an exhibition called Canning Town Folk, and we're going to talk about that later in the month as part of Newham Heritage Month. But I was very interested to see that around the turn of the 20th century, so 120 years ago, Newham was just as diverse as it is now. We have the most culturally mixed population in Europe and I think very possibly the world. But in Canning Town, where we are now, because of the docks and just the fact that it's London and London's always had a very diverse population, we not only had people here from Africa and the Caribbean and East Asia and South Asia, but also countries like Poland and Japan. So, people are moving in and making a home in Newham now, but I don't think they realise the very rich, diverse heritage. You were talking earlier, weren't you, about the Canning Town Coloured Men's Institute, which was set up in the 30s. And it was the first organisation in London and probably the UK that's known of, anyway, in terms of a formal organisation that was set up for people of colour. And that was Camel Kunchi, wasn't it? Very famous Newham resident. So there's a huge history of people from all over the world coming here to make it their home. I thought it was a great theme to choose. I don't think it was the original theme. I think it was selected because of this particular kind of situation.
Can I just ask you, Camel Kunchi? There was a wonderful film that I used as at the very beginning of my filmmaking workshops. It was set up by. It was created by a heritage group. What's the name of the heritage group?
Yes, so we're very lucky in Newham and the surrounding boroughs. We have an organisation called Eastside Community Heritage, I think, but I'll put it on our highlights page. The link is ech.org, but I will check that. And Eastside Community Heritage hold a huge local archive, including lots of films, and a great deal of that is available online. Certainly back in 2012, 2013, 2014, we screened within our annual film festival those films that had been made up until that point, and we've continued to screen some of their films. But yes, Eastside Community Heritage is a very good place to start if you're interested in oral history. And again, little bit of audio description. There goes the black and white cat between us again. I mean, you've visited Newham quite a bit, Robin. What's your take on it in terms of Heritage Month and making a home in Newham, and also things like, as an athlete, you've seen the park develop.
Well, I mean, I certainly from it's parts of it are so unrecognizable from what they were 15, 18 years ago before they started the development for the Queen Elizabeth Park. I like driving down there. I mean, everyone always has this sort of impression that the roads are going to be tiny and narrow, and everyone's got a barrow. I mean, and it's not. It isn't like that. I mean, like, when you do get into the sort of more markety bits, yeah, sure, it's a bit narrower. But then you get the culture, you get the people, you do get that kind of really cosmopolitan presentation of what that part of London is all about. I mean, and much more than other parts. Um, and I do, I mean, I'm a visitor, I think would be the best description. I'm almost a commuter, bit of a long commuter. But I mean, it's always really friendly. You want to go in a shop, then someone will hold the doors open for you without having to ask, and or if you sort of look like you're loitering outside, do you want help to get in or something like that. So I mean, there does seem to be kind of that kind of natural sense of community there, actually. And I've I mean, one of the other things that we do is together. Obviously not at the moment, but we've done quite a lot of community training, and I was in charge of the kind of delivering the inclusion training, and trained in I think 8 different venues in Newham, and every place to a venue was just completely welcoming, and people come in and find out what you were doing that weren't supposed to be there, but just, oh, what's going on in here, kind of, in a kind of very typical way that they present actually East Londoners, that kind of like cheeky chappy person, but actually in a nice way. It's like that. It's like, oh, there's something going on in that room. I'll put my head around the door and have a look what's going on, and kind of like, oh, we're doing training. Okay, sorry, and then sometimes they come in, which is great.
Well, funnily enough, we do feedback forms, of course, for all of our events and festivals because we want to keep improving and know that we're getting it right, or indeed where we're not getting it right. And people still say, when you say, "How did you find out about this?" Someone told me, some
Yeah,
email, but we're still very much a word of mouth community. I think it's been difficult because there's been headlines around the world identifying Newham as having the highest mortality rate in probably the world from COVID. But what they haven't seen is this very, very strong community response. Yes, there have been appalling problems. There have literally been hundreds of people queuing for food banks, but the food's been there. And it's been there because there's been this very, very detailed collaboration between the council, the voluntary sector, and the mutual aid groups that have formed on the ground. It's been very well organised. Nothing is perfect, but from day one, there's been a response that I think has been probably unequaled in the rest of the country. And we haven't seen that in the headlines. I saw more articles today about food banks and poverty, but I think it's always easier to make it a bad news story. If one has to live in a pandemic anywhere but New Zealand, and particularly if you have to be in the UK, I'd almost rather be in Newham because things have felt relatively safe and relatively structured and
yeah.
relatively well organised. And that is partly, I think, because it is, it's home in a sort of very heartfelt sense, isn't it?
And I think that some of that is will be because of the nature of the differing, the cultural spread of communities that you've got there. But I mean, even here in Sutton Coldfield, which is not is in the top section of places that are described as affluent. Um, you know, we're involved with a church in Sutton Coldfield, and their food bank is massively. I mean, it's oversubscribed. I mean, they're providing the food, because people in the community are, that that are resourced, are also pretty generous at giving it, giving the food. But I mean, even somewhere like Sutton, um, which everyone kind of thinks is really well off, there are hundreds and hundreds of people every week using food banks, and that's just the one that we know about. I mean, and there are two other churches that run food banks in the
And
locality.
And I think one of the things that we have to hold on to is the fact that those food banks are there. I think all of us, and particularly all of us, as we four are in the shielding group, were very frightened that things were going to be much worse than they have been. And I think it has been about everybody sticking together. Our slogan has always been "Together we are strong, together we can change the world." But now I think it's time to get back to our arts programme. And I'm just going to play you a relatively short video about our Join In From Home programme. So bear with me just 1 minute. Together 2012 is running a Join In From Home programme from our website, together2012.org.uk. Click on the link at the top of the page, Join In From Home, to go straight to the main page where you have a wide range of accessible, inclusive creative activities, mostly using things that you would already have at home. At the top of the page and throughout the pages, you will also see videos in British Sign Language to translate the site for deaf people. These videos can also be useful if you have difficulties reading and you simply want to hear more of the content. The Join In From Home programme is based on the activities that we would usually be running in East London. The dance club usually meets on the fourth Monday of each month, and they create improvised masked dance for the screen. Here you can also see their very first film, where they simply made masks from paper plates, covered themselves with fabric, and just moved gently to the music. You can hear as well there's an improvised soundtrack. So we're suggesting that you make a mask out of anything you can think of. It could be a cardboard box, a paper bag, a paper plate, as in here. Video yourself dancing in it and then share the video with us. We will show it on screen and we will also enter it into the dance programme of our film festival, which we run every December. If you're temporarily or permanently chair based, there's also a warm up you can do here created by our associate wheelchair dance company Folk in Motion, and that focuses on relaxing your upper body and improving your breathing. The Photographers and Filmmakers Club usually meets on the second Monday of each month. We're inviting you to make a video at home with the theme of home and share it with us. You can use a phone or a camera, make any kind of film you wish, including drama, documentary, dance, animation, artist films, comedy, and they'll be eligible for a CAT award at our December Film Festival. You can also watch with us from home. In addition to Together 2012 TV with Together Unlocked and other live streams, we have the Together Disability Film Festival highlights. Each year we run the International Together Disability Film Festival in Stratford, bringing together a wide range of films by disabled filmmakers, as well as films about disability issues and disabled people. We always publish the programmes online with links to the films that are freely available. So we invite you to revisit our recent film festivals from the comfort of your own home and also to send us reviews of those films. And finally, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy videos of past live performances, artist talks, and creative workshops that we've produced in the past here. So, for example, from past festivals, we have documentation and films of creative dance workshops, street art performances, dances that the dance club have created, dance performances, and of course, we're continuing to add new activities on a regular basis. And here we are back again. What did you think about that, Robin?
I think it's. I mean, what's out there, the stuff that people can look up about what we do, and then inspire themselves or be inspired to go and get creative, think creatively, use other people's inspirations to kickstart if they're not already artists. And for those of us that are, it's always good to see other people's work and kind of reflect how that kind of goes with yours. Does it complement it? Are they saying different things to you? Or so there's kind of just loads and loads of food for thought within that stuff. I mean, and the fact that anyone can take part, and we would encourage everyone to take part, is absolutely fantastic.
Yes, and of course, the other thing we very much encourage people to do, and you will see later and throughout the week, is just share your artwork and poetry and film with us. It doesn't have to be linked to the Join In From Home program. You don't have to be disabled. We would just love to see what you're doing at home to be creative and stay well. What did you have anything else to add to that, Julie?
Uh, no, I think it's good to be able to join in from home. I think particularly from in respect of just keeping your head straight while we're going through these really difficult times. It's important to be able to distract yourself. Not everybody can read or enjoys reading. Not everybody listens to music, and I think it's useful to be able to find something that's a distraction, that's creative, and it sort of opens that part of your brain, and your mind. Sort of, it helps to find a different way of looking at things, a different perspective.
Yes, I mean, for anybody who hasn't watched the show before, we do over the course of the week talk about techniques, about different activities, about things you can do if you're not feeling creative or you don't think you're a creative person, as well as a whole host of other things like what you can watch online, what virtual sport is going on, and so on and so forth. We've had a lovely film in from Stara Plurger and Hannah Facey from our associate drama company, Act Up Newham. Stara is shielding with Hannah and their assistant's dog Merlot. And if you're a regular viewer, you know that we've had a number of films from them, including different arts activities. And this is a film where Stara shows us how she's been tie dyeing t shirts. It's and I'll just say this for audio description. Stara is sitting at the beginning of the film on her sofa, showing the t shirt off that she's wearing, which is pink. But in the course of the very short film, she makes t shirts in a whole range of different colours. And I thought that was a really interesting reminder as well. You can have such kind of interesting effects with tie dye. It's such a straightforward thing to do, isn't it? You can't tell exactly, I think, from the film, but the way I've done it in the past is you can order the dye online and it's cold dye. Am I seeing any nodding from the boys, or is this a girly thing here? Oh, there's some nodding from Josh at least. And
It's called science experiments.
Okay, science experiments. I think you're supposed to tie it up when it's wet. Is there? Yes, no. We might have to put in a link to
The
Wikipedia.
teachers did that bit.
Well, the way you do it is you can literally just jumble your t-shirt or pillowcase up, tie string round it to make sure that some bits stay white and don't take the colour as much as others, and just see what you get. I remember when I was 18, I moved to the big city. I had my own bedsit and I had a set of sheets and pillowcases that inevitably went yellow because, of course, I didn't realise about things like not washing dusters with them. And I was living next to a laundrette. So what do you do but go and get yourself some hot dye that goes through the machines, bundle up your bedding, tie a bit of string around it. Did make a bit of a mess of the laundrette, but I had the most gorgeous bedding, which was just, it was like a lovely, lovely sky pattern because you had bits of darker blue, bits of lighter blue, bits of still quite yellowy white, but it was absolutely the best bedding I've ever had. So if you have some ordinary cotton bedding or a very dull t-shirt and you've got the money for a little bit of tie-dye, let's have a look and see what Stara did.
Hi, I'm Stara, and I made a beautiful t-shirt.
Red and yellow and pink and green, orange and purple and blue. I can sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow too. Listen with your eyes, listen with your eyes, and sing everything you see. You can sing a rainbow.
Well, here we are, all ready to go again. Seemed to stop rather abruptly there, so we're here and ready to go.
Thank you. No, it wasn't playing quite properly. I'm not sure why, but that's the internet and technology for you. I noticed that it was definitely wet when Stara was putting it in. I seem to remember you have to mix the dye with salt in order to get it to
The set.
yeah, to sort of set and not come out each time you wash it after that.
This was my life in the 60s. we were tie dyeing everything like wild. I mean, the cats and the dogs would have really found it difficult. But no, that yes, you basically tie something up and mix the dyes in, and then put salt in to make it sort of set. And the outcomes are always a surprise. So it's a lovely video.
Yes, we have the. I don't know if it's 3 or 4 ages of shielding. We very much hope that we will soon have our young women viewers with us. Well, I say viewers at the moment. We hope they will be turning into hosts, but we still have shielding from the 20s up to the 70s. So that's kind of nice to hear what it was like in the 60s. I'm often told that Together 2012 has that kind of feel about it. I'm not quite sure why. But
I imagine it's the guitar and the singing of original songs.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah, the poetry, the filmmaking, the performance art, and a certain commitment to love and peace, which I think has never been more relevant. So I'm not going to apologise for it. What other kind of creative activities do we usually do on a Monday? Yes, we usually do film and photography. So Julie heads up our Photographers and Filmmakers Club. You may have heard in the video, we meet on the second Monday of each month in more usual times. And in fact, we were partway through, well, we'd done all the pre production to shoot a film, which unfortunately, like so many other films, is going to have to be put off a bit. But we've talked previously, haven't we, about film techniques with smartphones, and I thought it might be nice to just come back to that a bit. And as with the tie dye, as we also say on the website, you do not need a top of the range smartphone or indeed a video camera in order to make a film. It's really very much about content and image, and yeah, not what you have, it's what you do with it.
I think for me, watching a lot of Twitter films and Facebook films and so on and so forth, I think it's always better to film it sideways so that it's in landscape mode, not portrait, because you get a better framing that way. But I notice an awful lot of people just use their phones as they would do ordinarily and hold it up.
I think it's really challenging. I mean, it's hard to believe now it was allowed to go ahead, but I remember watching Crufts in March and Claire Balding desperately saying to people, please send us in things that you filmed with your phone sideways. But if you want to put something onto Instagram or TikTok, it's not really that simple and straightforward. And in fact, I'm somebody who studied film at university and then made a film during my PhD. So I've always, been making films. It doesn't seem right to me to kind of suddenly have this very narrow band of vision. But I'm going to have to learn because I want to start putting things on TikTok and Instagram. And at the moment, if I go to put something like a film poem up that I've done on Twitter, you can't see the subtitles because so much has been cut off. I mean, what do you think, Josh?
I mean, I always prefer things in landscape for the same reason that kind of Julie mentioned. It's a wider kind of aspect ratio, so you can just get more in the frame. It's a little bit easier to view. Most people like to look at their phones landscape when they're watching, films, things about, Netflix and YouTube and things like that. It's that kind of TV. They are those landscape kind of orientations. I'm not particularly familiar with Instagram outside of looking at it because I don't have anything particularly interesting to put on it, so I don't really have an Instagram account. But yeah, it's much more of kind of portrait or square kind of 4:3 ratios, and I know TikTok is kind of portrait stuff as well. So I think if you're used to filming things landscape, it's a bit of a change. I have seen some kind of creative uses of it being portrait in the kind of what you can fit in the screen. But yeah, I'm not kind of super familiar with. I'm showing my not cool youth side that I'm not particularly familiar with creating TikTok or TikTok in general outside of kind of seeing it on Twitter. So
I, I,
unfortunately,
I think you're right about being creative with the space that you're filming. I think one of the difficulties that I have is when you have it in the portrait mode and you've got a massive amount of background, which is nothing. It's just a bit of ceiling or wall, and you've got a tiny little person down at the very bottom of the screen. And I'd be much more interested in seeing the person sort of larger and be able to more engaged with the individual rather than the environment. But I think you're absolutely spot on though, Josh. It's about what how how we make best use of what's available to us.
I think, I mean, the challenge that I think I'm setting myself at the moment is to think about how can you frame something so it can be cropped for
Mm.
any purpose. You know, if you start off landscape, how can you frame that so that you can turn it into a square, so you can take two-thirds of it out and still have a usable image. And I think the added complication, I always think, if you're a wheelchair user, as indeed we four are, is that you can't always get into the place that you would like to be to take the photograph. You know, traditionally, to get a photograph, you move to the left, you move to the right, you go up as high as you can, you sit down on the floor. All of that is more limited if you're using a chair, and also within a crowd, of course, what you tend to be is surrounded by backsides. I don't know if I'm the only wheelchair user who suddenly went over the weekend, hang on a minute, social distancing, we could move. You know, all I've been doing is seeing it as this, oh, well, you know, I don't suppose we'll probably even get out again this year, judging by everything that's being said, but, you know, it's all going to be. And I suddenly realised, you know, and you'd be able to see people. Because, of course, at the moment, you know, as we all know, if you're in a crowd, all you can see is the backside in front of you. And I thought, my goodness, we're going to be able to turn round. I mean, imagine being able to see the person behind you if they suddenly speak to you and actually having space. So, yeah, I have to rethink this whole social distancing thing. You know, right now it's not very realistic. You know, there's 5,000 new infections a day. And as we say, you know, if you don't have to go out, you should be at home. But in the future, wow.
I think that depends on people being sensible and keeping the good things. One of the difficulties at the moment is there seems to be a proliferation, an awful lot of people who are behaving like 8-year-olds let out of a school classroom into a playground, and they're throwing rubbish here, there, and everywhere. They're destroying the landscape. They're completely sorry.
Not too negative.
No, but I mean, it's we've seen it on the news, and it's very difficult to remember that there are people who would be positively maintaining social distancing and also positively aware of the environment. I find it very disappointing that there are people who behave so chaotically.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect some of the people who, you know, because we have talked about it a lot already, you know, when the weather's been better, you know, the sort of people who've just ignored the pleas from people down at the seaside, please don't come. I don't think those are people who usually go on holiday or go to the British seaside. And I think that is going to be a real challenge for all of our friends out there at the seaside and in other kind of country spots, that all of a sudden they will be inundated with people who would frankly rather be in Ibiza and are going to behave like that. But going back to the photography side, what I meant was, it's always been very difficult to get a position in the street where you can film easily, or you need to get much closer to somebody to pick up the sound, and you simply can't do it as a wheelchair user. So I do quite seriously think a bit of social distancing is not a bad thing. But I think also, when you're trying to picture framing something that's going to be really flexible. It's also about not having somebody too close in, isn't it? That's much harder to crop, I think, than something that's further out. If you have a camera, particularly the sort of latest iPhones or the latest Androids, really they come in such high resolution, you can get away with an awful lot of cropping, whereas if you've got a much older camera or phone, or and it's just got a kind of pixelation rate that's much lower, then I think it is harder to crop. But if you're shooting in something like 4K or 2K, you can crop and crop and crop and still have a fantastic image at the end of it.
I think as a photographer, I tend to go in close anyway. So, in terms of portraits, it's.
But that's where I think it becomes problematic.
I agree. I don't disagree with you at all. But I think you're right about being able to crop and crop. I think the other thing which I just really want to quickly mention, in terms of using your smartphone to make films, is be aware of where the light is. If you're in front of an open window with no curtains up, you're not going to be able to see the individual that you're filming very easily, because the light from the window is going to make everything very difficult to see clearly. So just turn around so that you're facing a different direction, but just be aware of your environment. And I don't think that's a bad thing anyway. As photographers and filmmakers, we need to be aware of what's going on around us. And if it's too busy, if there's lots of bits and pieces there that we're not interested in, get rid of them. Turn around, do it.
I was going to say, I think the other thing that it can be done to help with the overall quality of the film, and can be done at a very cheap level, is to buy an external mic, even if you're using an iPhone, because the mics have got such a broad pickup area. Whereas if you can buy like a really small directional mic which will plug into the phone, whatever, they're available for all models. That just enables you that if you do want to be having quite specific dialogue or whatever in it, you can get that without getting all the sound that's going on around you as well.
I think that's so important. I mean, of course, what people are now doing is using these techniques a lot for things like Zoom and Skype and other video calls. What I think then becomes problematic is if you've got a fixed computer, then controlling the light can be quite tricky. You might want to pull the curtains, but the person who is the other side of the sitting room might need the light for something else. It really is a bit of an experiment, but I think it's worth trying to get your if you're in those circumstances, I really think it's worth even if you have to move things around, trying to get a setup where the light is better. I mean, I know you two are still struggling in Sutton Coldfield. Do you want to explain the studio setup and the green screen behind and the lighting and what you're aiming to do, because that might be really helpful for people who are doing the same?
Well, okay. What we have, we've now got two good lights, so you can see that we're well lit, and the screen is lit because you can see our shadows. Whether we need something higher to try to eliminate shadows, I'm not sure.
Might do.
But the idea of the green screen is just like when people use, we've all, or the majority of us have watched weather forecasting happening, and you see them standing in front of a map of England, and then they're in a map of Europe, and then they're centering in on some particular weather feature in the map, and you're thinking, well, how are they doing that? And this is the same technology. Is they're standing in front of a screen, just a blank screen, but they know where to point. That's always the bit that got me. How do they know where to point? But the technology that exists is that where a camera sees green, it can then put a picture in the place of the green. So if you imagine there was a picture behind us now, instead of a green screen, we were trying it earlier, and we had a picture of the Olympic Stadium for Tokyo, and it seemed to work from this end beautifully, and it works really, really well on Zoom, this green screen. But as to what the exact technical issues are, so from this end it looked perfect, and we were sat both kind of as if we were TV presenters commentating, sat at the top of the stand, you know, with the capacity to look down and watch what was going on. But for some reason, it didn't translate across into what was going to come out for you to see as viewers of Together Unlocked.
But I'm sure it will on Wednesday, and we look forward to that. I think that's something that everybody needs to bear in mind. It's not even as simple as being able to buy all sorts of bits and pieces and link them together. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of things that can go wrong, or extra bits and pieces. It's like life, it's just really worth persevering. The first thing, if I'm teaching anybody digital work, is just, yeah, is that try and try again. And you might do the same thing 5 times identically, also you think, and it works on the fifth occasion. You know, there's nothing in life that comes that easily, but it really is worth persevering. And we can really internalize those things and think, oh, I just don't know how to do this, I'm no good at it. You know, and I think particularly if you're a disabled person or you've got something like dyslexia, it's just, you know, it doesn't work. Nothing works brilliantly. You're actually asking in digital terms for, you know, huge amounts of
Yeah.
information to be exchanged, lots of things to be triggered, and even something supposedly as simple as attaching an internal microphone to your phone. I know I've got an iPhone and it hasn't been quite as
Yeah.
easy.
I mean, one of the good
Work.
things about the digital stuff, though, I mean, obviously, in terms of being ready to go out to go live, has its own pressures, but generally, in terms of working in digital, one of the great things about it is it's infinitely repairable. You know, it doesn't. All it costs is time. Once you've got the stuff, you do it wrong, you just delete it and go again. You make a mistake. I mean, certainly in terms of um, using digital music studios, they have what they call non-destructive editing, which means that you can make changes, and if you don't like what you've done, you can just go back to where you were, which is not what, you know, in the old days of tape, or if you're in terms of, you know, making a film, you cut it up, it's very difficult to stick it back together without it being noticeable anyway.
And also, I mean, I think you're right. It's important not to give up. Don't despair. If it's not what you wanted to have as an outcome, then keep it as an outtake or whatever, and look at it again in the future, and you'll think, actually, that wasn't too bad. I think we are our own harshest critics, and does it really matter if it's not perfect straight away? I think not.
I often find that if I do a project, if I was going to do it again, I would do it completely differently, because you learn by doing. And
Yeah.
the great thing, if you like, about lockdown is people have that extra time. So maybe you do it twice. You know, maybe that's one of the lessons in some of the join in from home activities. You know, join in, enjoy them, and then do them again. You know, do the things that you wished you'd done the first time round. Often when we're on deadline, it's not really quite that straightforward, but certainly, again, I make physical versions of my digital work, and the second version is always better than the first version, because of all the things that you think, well, I've tried it that way, and now I'm going to try it a different way.
Absolutely.
And I think, as we've talked before, there's lots of very simple your phone has the ability within it to edit the video. It isn't just about shooting the video. You know, one little phone these days is like a whole studio.
Absolutely. It's like magic.
Still like magic. Everything's like magic these days. That's what it is. We thought that J.K. Rowling was in an imaginary world. She was just ahead of all of us.
That's absolutely right.
She certainly was that. So I'm just looking for something that I'm going to be reading at the end of the show. It's almost 5 to 4. Do we want to talk a little bit about what's going to be happening on Wednesday?
Sure, yes.
We'll
Yes.
start with the West Midlands and virtual sport.
That's you.
Yes, so Wednesdays. Thanks, mate. Wednesdays we normally kind of touch on what's going on in the world of sport, what's going on in gaming, and then we have our Paralympics racing wind-up toys competition. That I believe the score is currently 6-3 to us. Not that we're
It's
counting, not that we're keeping track of that, but it is 6-3. And in terms of the virtual, or not, well, virtual gaming, all gaming is virtual. In terms of gaming, we've just downloaded a co-op only kind of story-driven game that we're going to try and play a little bit of before Wednesday. And I'm saying that now so that I can guilt him into playing it later, because I can say that we have to do it for work. So that we might be able to get some of it done. But no, hopefully we'll be able to kind of give some feedback on how that's going on Wednesday.
And I'm hoping that the Poetry Club will be on Wednesday morning, so that we'll have more offerings from the great minds of Newham.
Well, in fact, I was going to read a poem from the Pop-Up Poetry Club now, but indeed the cat has gone off with it. So Alex's poem will be added to the other poems we'll be reading on Wednesday. Yes, that's right. In real life terms, we run a Pop-Up Poetry Club every Wednesday morning, and we've now moved over. Perhaps not quite successfully yet, because the system is not so great, but very successfully in terms of the poets moved over to a virtual poetry system. We'll be talking again about our themes, Newham Heritage Month and Pride Month. The links will be on our highlights page, along with some of the other things we've mentioned. And I think something about tie-dye. We will find you a good link about tie-dye. And if I can, well, actually, I was about to offer to get some dye in, but what am I thinking? Julie Newman is staying with me. Do I want her tie-dyeing in my white walk-in bath? Probably not.
Yeah, I'm worried. I don't know if Stera's got any clothes left either. I mean, that's the if Julie starts tie dyeing, then it's going to be. But mind you, it'll double your wardrobe, won't it? You wear it inside and.
Absolutely.
Yes, I don't think the black's going to take much time. Every time you can see our camera move and juggle, it's just a cat leaping on the top of it. Did you have any final words for today, Julie?
A random thought. I was thinking over the weekend about growing up in the 50s and 60s and the things that we used to do at home to keep ourselves occupied, because we didn't have televisions. We had a radio, but we didn't really use it that much at my mother's family home. So what we used to do was we used to play cards a lot. We played Newmarket and gin rummy and cribbage. And I thought I might have a little look at, because I have no idea of how to play Newmarket, but it was one that used to get all members of the family sort of like, almost like surgeoners.
I think that sounds like a really good idea. I'm going to say, don't go away. Say goodbye when I've read this, which I have just pulled off the internet. My website, I keep apparently always forgetting to tell you, is due90.co.uk. And this poem is called The Gentrification of Upton Park, which is indeed where Judy lives. We did have just around the corner the football ground and the bus garage, but no more. No more buses pulling out noisily next door, waking us up at 3 a.m., lives punctuated by their timetables. No more police riding down the street after fans, rousing cheers from the stadium, calendars dictated by match schedules. No more locals working right around the corner, jingling cash in neighbours' pockets, chances created by ticket sales. Now towers are jostling for space around us, sucking gold for foreign landlords, residents all fated by the planners. So that was the gentrification of Upton Park. And unfortunately, it's true. We have many towers now jostling for space where the football ground once was, with remarkably little to show the community that put up with it and supported it for so many decades. I'm glad to say the developers for the bus garage, Telford Homes, actually turned out to be very different and indeed have supported Together 2012. But whilst we Yes, I think none of us expected to miss the football ground quite as much as we did, because it is quite tricky when you can't get in and out of your own
I don't
home
miss
around
it.
certain
I
timetables.
don't miss it at all.
All right, Julie doesn't miss it at all. So on that happy note, yes, she made a home in Newham, moved in, said, I don't think much of the bus garage and the football ground, everything else is okay. And within 10 years, of course, the bus garage and the football ground had gone.
She owns all those tower blocks. She's just keeping it quiet.
I am indeed.
Yes, Monopoly is another game we must try again. But in the meantime, it's 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us. We'll be back on Wednesday at 3. The recording of this show should be live on YouTube by 7:30. It takes a little bit longer for the subtitles to download, but they will be there by 8:30 at the latest. And you'll see on the recordings from last week onwards, they will now play automatically with captions off our website, thanks to global real-time captioning. So thank you for Julia, who's been keyboarding away throughout the show. Thank you to Norma, who's been organising it. I'm delighted that we finally have live captions, and I will look forward with everybody else to seeing you on Wednesday with live captions as well. So it's goodbye from East London.
And it's goodbye from West Midlands. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, where's my hand?